Really honored and grateful to be here tonight. And the reason for that slide is I think the pastor did a great job of setting this up tonight, that we are at war right now. We're at a spiritual war, but we're at a war that is taking place right here in our home. And I get to speak to men on a daily basis. I've had thousands of conversations over the last 5 years with young men that are struggling, that feel lost. And I think a lot of it is due to lack of purpose. I love the quote from John Eldridge in Wild at Heart, that deep in his heart, every man longs for a battle to fight, an adventure to live, and a beauty to rescue. This war with human trafficking was something I was introduced to in 2019, early 2020. I was having a podcast, I was talking about my journey, my struggles, how quitting porn changed my life, and we were having a lot of success. And I remember getting a phone call from a dear friend, somebody I look at as a guide, a mentor. Driving across 275 in downtown Tampa, phone rings, pick it up, Josh, what's going on? He said, Frank, I had a dream last night. You were in it. Not just you. There were children. They were being hurt. And they were in danger. And it was you and other guys kicking down doors, rescuing these children. This is years before the movie Sound of Freedom. This was years before Tim Ballard really came on the scene. I said, Josh, what are you talking about? Frank, you were saving kids. I didn't know that phone call was going to change the trajectory of my life. A few months later, I get introduced to somebody that runs a local organization here, Natasha, the head of Redefining Refuge. Much like Sarah and the team here at Stop the Movement, Natasha's work is world-changing. When I understood that there was a link between what I had spent 20 plus years consuming and harming and endangering kids, I said, I'm going all in. It's something I'm willing to die for. My goal here today is to educate, inspire, and maybe call some of you here today to not let this battle end in this room, but take it out on the streets. I believe what we consume in our early years shapes who we become in our adult life. I grew up idolizing guys like Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, Macho Man Randy Savage. It's no surprise when I found bodybuilding that I dedicated my life to it. I remember watching the movie Top Gun. Good versus evil. Today I get to speak on stages, I get to have conversations with our podcast that I feel are doing good and changing the world. I remember the small life lessons Mr. Miyagi was teaching, how to paint a fence, wax a car, were true life lessons, self-defense lessons. Sarah mentioned we take a holistic approach to pornography addiction recovery. Oftentimes I'm called the Mr. Miyagi of our space. The guys don't understand when I say clean up your room, date your wife, take pride in how you look. Those are lessons of self-respect, discipline, integrity. When you walk in those things, it's hard to struggle with an addiction. So who is Frank Rich? I mentioned I'm a former bodybuilder, entrepreneur, certified men's health and recovery coach, owner of Frank Rich Fitness, small online fitness company. We've helped guys for the last 7 years transform their bodies. I host a Superhuman Life podcast. It's top 100 podcasts here in the United States. 2.1 million podcasts. Actively, we've made it to the top 100, something I'm really honored and grateful for. Through that show, I've been able to interview the world's leading experts in neuroscience, addiction, health, psychology, and much of what I get to do with the men that I work with have been the things that I've learned from these amazing people. I'm the CEO and founder of Rebuilt Recovery. So that's who I am. But how did I get here? Much like many of the men I'm going to talk about here in a little bit, I was introduced to porn at a very young age. Now I'm grateful that I grew up in the 80s and 90s and what I saw wasn't what the kids have access to here today, because I could only imagine how my life would be different. I can look back and see the rise, though, of my struggles as I got access to the internet. Had a life-changing moment on October 22nd, 2018, where I did find my faith. I was there with Josh in Orlando, surrendered my life to Christ.
Amen.
And because of him, I've been able to walk in absolute freedom from pornography for over 5 years now. February 14th, 2019. And that date changed my life. Changed how I saw myself, changed how I saw every single person that I interacted with, and ultimately changed everything that I've dedicated my life to doing. So I said, what we see in our early years dictates who we become in our adult life. A survey done with 2,000 young Americans ages 13 to 38. 86% of young people want to be a social media influencer. It's kind of shocking. When they think of influencer, they see the people on TikTok dancing. We've all seen it. We're walking through a public place and there's a girl that's got her phone set up on a water bottle. The real influencers, though, I think are a lot different. Up here we have Mr. Beast and the Paul brothers. Mr. Beast is the #1 YouTuber, #1 Instagram, #1 TikTok. Billions of views. Gets more views on his videos than the Super Bowl gets eyeballs on them. I've studied his background, though. He's not somebody that dances in front of a camera. He's a true business expert mind, a true marketer, brand builder. Not what the 13 to 38-year-old people are thinking of when they say, I want to be an influencer. He would have succeeded in any business he would have started. He just was fortunate to grow up in our world today. The Paul brothers, although sometimes can be goofy and quirky in the things that they do, once again, incredible business minds. Not what the average person thinks of when they think of, I want to be an influencer. Real quick talk about OnlyFans. Show of hands, everybody know what OnlyFans is? It's a site that has a paywall. And if you ask me, it's a site that promotes and endorses and profits off of online prostitution. There's 188 million users on this site right now. Any one of us could go set up a free account right now. 2.1 million creators. Any one of us right now could go set up an account and be a creator. Now there is some good that's taking place there. I know guys that have fitness companies, I know educators that use this as a way to monetize their services, although there's better platforms out there. I think the alarming stat is that there's 70% of the creators are women. If you ask me, they're probably, the vast majority of them, 18 to 25. There's a handful of people in the world that make a significant living, millions of dollars. Top 1%, in fact, makes 33% of the total revenue. But the average creator makes $180 a month. Now here's where I think this leads to, though, because these girls see some of these top performers that are making millions of dollars a month. And once again, what we see when we're young shapes what we want to become later on in life. Should they subscribe to this belief that I could start a social media profile? I can use it as a way to market people into my OnlyFans account. But then 6 months go by and they realize they're not making any money. And then a smart producer of a porn company begin to seek them out. Hey, I see you're not really winning. Why don't you let me promote you? Why don't you let me be your agent? And then before you know it, this girl's being exploited through the porn industry. A lot of people talk about OnlyFans as a great source of female empowerment. Once again, the things we see when we're young shape who we want to become. They say empires built by the Kardashian family, billions of dollars, all started from a sex tape 20 years ago. See somebody like Black China. I think she makes $2.1 million a month on OnlyFans. It gives them the belief that they can be famous. But famous on OnlyFans? Famous for online prostitution? Now, a lot of my work is centered towards men. And I'm really happy to see the amount of men that we have in today's audience, because I think we play a big role in this as well. Quick search online. Subscribe to my girlfriend's OnlyFans. Shirts I'll regularly see at the gym here. Only gains. Clear use of branding and marketing that the majority of people are going to understand what it is. Same thing with Gym Hub. So I say we're at a war, because there's more people out there promoting that than there are in this room right now. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the data around porn use, accessibility, and then we'll get into what it does to a young person's mind when they see this. So 93% of boys and 82% of girls, 62% of girls, exposed to internet before the age of 18, internet porn, before the age of 18. You'll see different stats around the age of first exposure, sometimes as low as 8, but the average is roughly somewhere between the ages of 11 years old. 70% of boys have spent 30 plus minutes consecutively consuming watching pornography. And all you need to do is understand a little bit about how our brain is developed and the stages of development, which we'll cover here in a minute, to understand how dangerous and destructive this can be. I didn't have access to the internet till 15. That was dial-up. You guys remember? Take 30 minutes to maybe even see one photo. Once again, I said I'm very grateful that I didn't grow up in today's world. 35% have watched 30 plus minutes 10 plus times. 83% of boys have admitted to seeing group sex online. 67% of children admit to clearing their history, which is a sign that they're participating in a behavior that they know they shouldn't be doing, which once again, understanding brain development to a small degree will tell you how dangerous that is. And 79% of these accidental exposures happen at home, which is why Sarah's presentation is so important. Zoom in and look at the problem from the bigger scale, though. 40 million Americans regularly view pornography sites. And 12% of all websites are pornographic. Now, the problem here is that only 3% of these sites require any level of age verification. 2.5 billion emails are sent a day that contain pornographic material. 1/4, 25% of all search engine requests are porn. That's 70 million a day. 70% of men admit to viewing pornography on a monthly basis. And I believe that last number is a lot higher based on the amount of conversations I have on a daily basis. But 10% of these users admit to being addicted. That's a hard one because we're still fighting a battle and even having the acceptance of pornography addiction being a real thing. So again, it's a big war. It's a big fight. Let's go a little bit closer. 40% of teens say they have seen porn at school from school-issued devices. So what we do at home is incredibly important, but creating the safe space to have those conversations is just as important. 60% admit to seeing it multiple times a month. 45% of teens have said they've seen porn to learn about sex. 53% of boys and 39% of girls believe it to be a real depiction of what sex is. Once again, incredibly dangerous when you understand a small bit about the development of the human brain. This number is shocking. 34% of teens, 13 to 17, thought it was normal to send their nude photos. And this one's alarming as well. 75% of parents believe their child has not seen it. Brain development. So term in neuroscience said, what fires together, wires together. I mean, as something happens in your life, it creates a neurological response within your brain. Your brain is a prediction learning machine, meaning its job is to predict what's going to happen in the future. So when you see something and it creates a certain feeling or induces a particular behavior, that becomes your default way of living. We all have things that we do on a daily basis. 80% of our life is driven subconsciously, because over time, our brain develops these patterns of behavior. That's why the brain is not fully developed till somewhere between the ages of 23 and 27 years old, roughly 25. 23 on the female side, you guys advance a little bit quicker than we do. Men, it's 25 to 27. That last part of the brain, though, is the one that is so important, though, our prefrontal cortex. It regulates our thoughts, actions, emotions. So if we're getting introduced to pornography, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, and every time we become stressed, angry, triggered in life, we lose the ability to process these emotions. And our pathway to handling these things become the use of pornography. That's why I believe it's no surprise that the addiction rates are as high as they are. Get dozens of applications into our coaching program on a weekly basis. Grabbed a couple screenshots from some of them. So we've put these guys through a series of questions, asking them a handful of things before we will get on a consultation call. It's a review process. We need to filter, obviously, our time. But this first one up here in the top left, 21-year-old man. You scroll down to the fourth line, though. The question that I ask at that point is, tell me about your struggle. What are you currently struggling with right now? I didn't ask about his past. I didn't ask about the introduction to pornography. Struggled overcoming it for 9 years of my life. 21, which means at 13 he was aware he had a problem with pornography. This next one, I've used it excessively over a decade. It's affected my confidence, inability to have sex and be intimate with real life partners. 21 years old. Since 10 years old, very close to my father, but he was abusive. I used it to escape from that and not fitting in. 26 years later, still something I struggle with deeply. Go further to the right, I've struggled with years of porn and porn addiction. I've lost hours at a time. It's impacted the way that I've been unable to release with women. I've had a problem with PMO since I was 11 years old. I'm not sure if addicted is the right word here, but porn has been a part of my life since I was 13 to 14 years old. I had a problem with porn and masturbation since the age of 13. I had a lot more. I've been watching porn and masturbating for as long as 15 years. I think he was 26 years old. I've been struggling with predominantly masturbation since the age of 16. I've been addicted to porn since puberty. Been struggling with porn and masturbation since I was 14 or 15 years old. Social media is full of promiscuous people. It's kind of like light porn. When I see it, that kind of stuff, I start to think about women in a sexual way, and I start thinking about visiting porn sites. Since the age of 11, it's a small fragment of what I received in a week. That's why the safety is important. That's why the conversations are important. But what can all of us in here do? I'm going to continue to take care of that problem. I promise that. We're the best in the world at what we do. But here, we all can do something. And I think it's first with exactly what Sarah said. Monitoring our own usage. It's what's caught, not taught. The average adult spends 3 hours and 15 minutes on their phone per day. Can't tell your child not to. That's what you're doing. Some shocking stats here. 89% check it within 10 minutes of waking up. 75% feel uneasy leaving their home without it. 75% of people use the phone on their toilet. 57% of people admit to being addicted or consider themselves addicted to their phones. Almost 70% of people have texted somebody that's in the same room. If your kids see you doing that, that's what they're going to do. You can have all the access and all the filters and everything. It'll still find them, though. I can guarantee it. So we can start by being aware. We can also continue to get educated. I don't think it stops here tonight. The internet and the bandwidth that we have it is maybe 20 years old, if that. More and more research and science is coming out every day. More and more laws are being put into place, which I think is amazing. But I think we're far from society and the world taking care of the problem. We got to take care of it ourselves. You're too old advertisements that I love to kind of bring up when people push back that there's no such thing as pornography addiction. The one here on the left, I believe it's from the 40s, where doctors prescribed or recommended Camel cigarettes to pregnant women. Now, everybody would understand today that smoking is harmful and dangerous for everybody, let alone a woman that is creating a child inside of her belly. We go back 150 years, cocaine-laced tooth drops. Science and research is always 20 to 30 years behind society. So we have to take these things, take these conversations, and bring them into our homes, bring them into our communities. So we can be aware of what we're doing, we can continue to get educated, but become the role model your children need. Because if you don't do it, the internet will. You can have all the access, all the filters placed up. But I always say that there will come a time in every young child's life when their eyes see something that their brain is not developed to handle. I had a gentleman on my podcast maybe 3 years ago. Chris McKenna runs Protect Young Eyes. They go out there, educate schools, educate organizations, create educational resources for parents on the dangers of exactly what we're talking about here today. I can remember Chris telling me, pornography should be the most popular word in everybody's home. Your kids should know what it is, should know what it isn't, and they should know who they go to when they see it. Because if they don't have that person in their life, you'll keep it inside. Maybe go talk to their friends about it. Create guilt, create shame. It's that prefrontal cortex, rational thinking, emotional processing is not developed for them. This is Diani. It's a young woman I met last September. I remember sitting across from her. I was on a panel podcast, and we were both brought into Atlanta to talk on this big YouTube streaming show. She started talking about her story. She was 21, 22 years old when I met her. Struggled with it since a very young age. She went deeper into how it happened, though. I was on Google, and I just was searching up Disney. Before she knew it, she clicked on a site that was cartoon porn. She lacked a father figure. She lacked somebody she could go to. And it put her into a deep, addictive, depression, shame-laced cycle for almost 7-8 years. Now she's been free, and she's leveraging her story and the power of God to change other people's lives. It's truly amazing. But nobody would have ever known. No sight protector would have been able to keep her from seeing what she saw. So what's next for all of us? Guys, we can't allow this to stop here today. Sarah and her team will continue to do their part. Kate will continue to do her amazing work. We'll continue to work with the men that we can. But every single one of us in this room today has something that we can take from here and use our gifts, our skills, our resources, our talents. For the men and the women, my call is to commit to not looking at porn. You're going to keep it out of your home and out of your children's eyes. You got to keep it out of your life. When it's brought to you, don't allow guilt or shame to enter into that conversation. Educate yourself a little bit more on the development. Give yourself some resources. Sarah shared a lot of them. There's a great book out there. And I remember last time I gave this conversation, there was a woman who was kind of pushing me on actually having the conversation with her kids. And I think Kristen shared it with me recently. I talked about the book, Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, and something she was hesitant about doing. But I was happy to hear that she got the book, she read it. She actually had the conversation with her kids, and it was needed. So that's what we can all do here, is not let it end here. Take this information, take these resources, and share it with as many people as we possibly can. Now, I work with men, and I opened up with saying that men today are lost. I see it every day. Many of you may as well. Alan Smith works for an organization, LA organization called Saving Innocence, and he wrote a book called Men, Fight for Me. I also had Alan on the podcast, and I remember asking him, Alan, what was the genesis of this book, man? What made you want to write a book called Men, Fight for Me? He told me, Frank, I was sitting in an event very similar to the one we're in today. And there's a former victim. Somebody had been trafficked for years of her life, giving up sharing her testimony on the stage. She went on to talk about her story, how it happened, how every person that she met and got involved with in the industry was a man. Every person that trafficked her and profited off of her was a man. Every person that consumed her or used her was a man. She told the audience, I reached a point where all I could think was, I need a man to fight for me. And Alan said hearing that shook him to his core, because he was in the minority sitting in that audience. He took that, he wrote an amazing book, and sharing that story, he broke down on the podcast. When I first met Sarah 3-4 years ago, Sarah, we did the streaming. I was early on in the work of building Rebuild Recovery, looking for any opportunity to get back. What can I do? How can I help? How can I serve? Do you need money? Do you need graphics? What do you need? I remember she looked me dead in the eye and said, Frank, we need men. Speaking with Andy earlier today as well, doing great work with Sarah and her team. Sarah blew it away. Kate's going to blow it away here in a minute. But I know this message is received differently when it comes from a man's mouth. So I'm sorry to hijack this so much and speak directly to the men. But we need all of us. And that's my call to you guys here today. We're in a fight. We're in a battle. Pastor said at the beginning, he heard from people that said, I know I need to hear this message, but it's too much for me. Albert Einstein knew it. The world will not be destroyed by those that do evil, but by those that watch them without doing anything. So we can't let this end here today. I appreciate you guys. Grateful and honored to be here. And I know we'll wrap it up and we'll do a Q&A at the end, but I'm going to hand it back over to Sarah. God bless you guys.